irremediably savage nature. Here, Morris is revealing his contempt, not only for Palestinians, which is profound, but also for his American audience. He apparently assumes that they will not notice that he is borrowing the terrible phrase from Zionist ideology, whose core principle over a century has been to redeem the land. The principle lies behind what Morris recognizes as a central theme of the Zionist movement from its origins: transfer, that is, expulsion, of the indigenous population to somewhere else, so as to redeem the land for its true owners, who are returning to it after 2,000 years. Morris is identified as an Israeli academic and author of major studies on the Israel-Arab conflicts, in particular on the origins of the Palestinian refugee problem. That is correct. He has done the most extensive work on the Israeli archives and published valuable scholarly accounts. He also demonstrates in considerable detail the savagery of the Israeli operations in 1948 and 1949 that led to transfer of most of the population from what became Israel, including the part of the UN-designated Palestinian state that Israel took over, dividing it roughly in half with its tacit Jordanian partner. In Morris's own words, "Above all, let me reiterate, the refugee problem was caused by attacks by Jewish forces on Arab villages and towns, and by the inhabitants' fear of such attacks, compounded by expulsions, atrocities, and rumors of atrocities, and by the crucial Israeli cabinet decision in June 1948 to bar a refugee return, leaving the Palestinians crushed, with some 700,000 driven into exile, and another 150,000 left under Israeli rule." Morris is critical of Israeli atrocities and ethnic cleansing, literally ethnic purification of Palestinians. One reason is that it did not go far enough. Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion's great error, Morris feels, perhaps a fatal mistake, was not to have cleansed the whole country, the whole land of Israel, as far as the Jordan River. To Israel's credit, Morris's stand on this matter has been bitterly condemned. In Israel. In the United States, he was considered the appropriate choice for the sole commentary on his reviled enemy. The Palestinians are, of course, the prime victims of U.S. and Israeli rejectionism. Israel has suffered too, even during the several decades when it was surprisingly free from retaliation from within the territories, where the Palestinians silently endured brutality, torture, degradation, and robbery of their lands and resources. Israel's U.S.-backed refusal to accept a peace settlement in 1971 led to much misery and near disaster. Its refusal since to accept a political settlement is driving it on the road to catastrophe. 4 former heads of the Shin Bet Security Service have warned, calling for a peace agreement in which most of the settlements would be abandoned. Israel has been behaving disgracefully toward Palestinians, said Avraham Shalom, one of the 4. An early opponent of the occupation, the renowned Orthodox scholar and scientist Yeshayahu Leibowitz, was famous for his prediction that oppressing another people would lead to serious moral degeneration, corruption, and internal decay. By now, his warnings have entered the mainstream in Israel. One of Israel's leading legal analysts, Moshe Negbi, describes with despair Israel's descent to the condition of a banana republic. Negbi reserves his most bitter scorn not just for the increasingly corrupt political leadership across the political spectrum, but also for Israel's courts. The courts, he writes, are capable of imposing a 6-month sentence on an interrogator who tortured a prisoner to death, or a Jew convicted of murdering an Arab child, of tolerating secret prisons where inmates disappear in the manner of neo-Nazi Argentina and the Soviet Union, and of innumerable other crimes that he sees as destroying Israeli democracy and the rule of law by acceding to the thugs of the racist fundamentalist right. In a searing indictment of Israel's subordination to the settlers in the occupied territories from the earliest days of the occupation, diplomatic correspondent Akiva Eldar and historian Idit Zartel recount how the ugly racist regime of the lords of the land not only crushes the most elementary human rights of the Palestinians, but also demolishes the basic norms of Israeli democracy. Even more than their book infuriates, writes military political analyst Ruvain Pedatzur, the book saddens anyone who cares for the fate, the image, and the future of Israeli democracy. Eldar and Zartel emphasize that the development of the settlements would not have been possible without the massive assistance they received from the various political institutions, the authorization of the courts from which they benefited, and without the relations of sympathy and shared goals that were constructed between the settlers and the military command. From the Eshkol labor government of 1967 to the governments of Rabin and Perez, and on to the present, none can escape responsibility for the expansion of the settlements and the assault against human rights and Israeli democracy. Eldar and Zartel also stress the particularly sad harm caused by the judicial authorities. They review shocking racist court judgments, among them very light sentences for the brutal murder of Arab children, and even court refusal to pass sentence on Jews by appeal to the saying that you should not judge your neighbor unless you are in his place. Such stands have been destroying the entire basis of the judicial system, Eldar and Zartel write. It is only against this background, Pedatzur adds, that one can comprehend the decision of occupation authority official Plia Albeck, who, with the support of the courts, rejected the appeal of a Palestinian man for compensation after the border police had killed his wife, on the grounds that he only gained from his wife's death, because when she was alive he had to support her, but now he does not, and therefore the damage to him is at most zero. Benny Morris writes that the work of the military courts in the territories and the Supreme Court which backed them will surely go down as a dark age in the annals of Israel's judicial system. Meanwhile, Eldar and Zartel conclude the lives of the large majority of Israelis within the Green Line, the international border, continue undisturbed, while the settlements in the occupied territories conquer the State of Israel on the one hand and destroy the lives of the Palestinians on the other. The reasons why Israelis continue their lives undisturbed are not hard to fathom. They are described by Israeli journalist Amira Haas, who has lived in and reported from the occupied territories for years. There is a settler in every Israeli, she explains, at least in every relatively privileged one. The West Bank settlement enterprise has become a means of socio-economic advancement for many Israelis, who, thanks to government subsidies, can obtain lovely houses that they could never afford in Israel. For them, this is a way of dealing with the gradual destruction of the welfare state, as Israel has adopted some of the worst features of its protector. Furthermore, the settlements ensure Israel's control over Palestinian resources, so we, the Jews, can be wasteful, as if we lived in a land with abundant water, while Palestinians lack water to drink. And Jews can benefit from modern highways, built on lands stolen from the Palestinians, which serve not only the settlers, but also many other Israelis, whose developing middle-class consciousness requires convenience, efficiency, and time-saving. There is also a bonanza for the wide range of businesses that benefit from the building boom, and by guaranteeing a continuing security threat, the settlements necessitate the growth of the security industry. It is no surprise, then, that the public is not troubled by the question of what settlement is doing to the region's future. The crushing of the Palestinians and destruction of their society remains invisible, and the future is for someone else to worry about. Travel on the roads of Gaza, closed to Palestinian traffic for years, exposes the full dimensions of the physical destruction Israel left